Hey guys, welcome back to the Short-Term Rental Authority podcast. We are John and Wendy Williams, your trusted authorities on all things short-term rental related to help make you the best operator ever. And today's podcast, the title that we came up with, which I think is really good, by the way, is the number one mistake that we see real estate investors make when they are thinking about or have started a short-term rental business.
Right, and I would say that number one mistake is actually alluded to in what you just said.
What did I just say?
Business.
Oh, I did say business.
Yeah, because it's natural for you to call it that. It's natural for you to call it a short-term rental business.
Well, that's because that's my perspective.
Right, but what they're saying is they're investing in short-term rentals.
Right,
and you realize that that's the problem, actually. The biggest mistake is looking at it through the lens of a real estate investor or from the perspective of real estate investing.
Right, because it has very little to do with the real estate, actually.
Right, which doesn't feel correct at all. Right, that feels like, well, I'm buying the house to turn it into a short-term rental. Tell me how it's not real. What?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Right. But that actually ends up creating problems if you don't realize that.
Yeah, lots of problems.
Yeah.
So if I'm thinking, well, okay, well, what kind of problems does that create? Well, number one, if you have the property already.
Yeah.
And you're trying to operate a business inside of it, I think a lot of people don't even realize that
that's what's going on.
They're two separate businesses.
Yeah, they really are.
Right? So you've got the real estate that you are owning or whatever, and that has to make money. And then you're also starting another separate business. Keyword, separate business, which is the short-term rental business, which you are operating inside the real estate.
Yeah, and even there, I know there's some people that hear that and they're like, I don't get it, because I've tried to explain this before in just that way, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, I have to.
So I started making analogies. So I described the short-term rental side of it, I'm going to say business, is much more like running a restaurant. It's much more like I'm going to open a restaurant and I'm going to serve people food. And really what they're coming there for is the food, the atmosphere, the experience.
Ooh,
right?
I think you just said a key word there.
And we were having this discussion earlier and I said, it really has nothing to do with the building that it's in.
Unless it's Olive Garden.
And then Wendy says, unless it's Olive Garden.
Unless it's Olive Garden.
Because she really likes the architecture of an Olive Garden. She likes the food too. Right?
I do. I really like that. But anyway.
But it's not really the building that attracts you.
No, it's not. It's the whole experience.
Right. And that's kind of the point, right? It's not the real estate, the value that you're getting, the whole reason that it makes more money than doing, say, a long-term rental is because, well, you're actually running a business in it. So here's a good analogy for you. If I owned, because this is easier to see, if I owned a strip mall, is that what you call those? Like it's a,
Well, it has a whole bunch of different.
Yeah, like there's a parking lot, there's
a
bunch of different stores in it, right?
Yeah.
And they all open to the outside type. Well, oftentimes there's a restaurant in there. In fact, there's a joke in North Carolina that every Food Lion has a Chinese restaurant in the same strip mall.
Right.
And we kind of tested that, and it seems to be true.
Well, at least in our area.
Still testing that hypothesis. But regardless, right, the guy that owns the strip mall isn't necessarily the same guy that runs the Chinese restaurant.
Right.
Right. Typically, the Chinese restaurant is leasing that space inside the building because they're the ones that know how to run a Chinese restaurant. The guy that owns the real estate is in real estate.
Probably doesn't know how to run a restaurant.
Right. And he would probably never think to himself, hey, I could get more rent if I owned the Chinese restaurant.
Right.
Right? He would realize that, oh, I'm starting a whole nother business. Yes, I'm going to run it in my strip mall. But what I'm also foregoing is the rent that I would normally be collecting from the Chinese restaurant, because now I'm paying the rent, right? Or hopefully my restaurant is profitable enough that it pays the rent.
I hope so.
And then I have both, right? I'm leasing the space out and now I'm running a restaurant, but I don't know how to run a restaurant. So I've got to go learn how to run a restaurant, and like what are all the things I need and who are all the people I need to hire and all of this kind of thing. But for some reason, when it's short-term rentals, when you just take that away and say, okay, I have this house, but I'm going to turn it into a short-term rental, people miss that.
Yeah.
That really what I'm doing is I'm putting a hospitality business inside of this house.
Right.
And that hospitality business better be able to afford rent.
Right. They don't realize that it's an actual separate business in and of itself.
Yes. And that's where you see a lot of people, and because people don't make that distinction, and maybe because they're looking at it like, because it looks very similar. It's like, well, instead of renting it a year at a time, I'm just going to rent it a day at a time.
It does, yeah.
Well, that's a whole different business.
It is.
Because it's not about renting the space at all. It's about the food that you serve there. If I'm using
the customer experience.
Yes, it's all about that.
Yep.
And do you know anything about the hospitality business?
Right.
Right? Like, just like, do you know anything about running a Chinese restaurant?
That's a good analogy. I like that one.
And people get caught up because they'll go set it up. They'll, perhaps, there's all sorts of YouTube videos and things you can read and courses you can buy, frankly, and things like that purport to teach you about how to do that. The problem is a lot of the people teaching those courses are also real estate investors.
Right.
Right? And that could be a problem. That could be an issue, right? So maybe it's better, okay, maybe I should study hospitality and decide, hey, is that really the business I want to run, number one? And then two, once you make that realization, then you start approaching things differently, don't you?
Yeah, for sure.
Like what you were just saying, not the property first.
Right, not the property first. Because one of the things that we've noticed in all the people that we've coached is if you start with the property first, it's almost backwards. Maybe that's not the right word to say it, but
it's out of sequence.
You're trying to shoehorn your customer into this property, right? So taking that into consideration is the first thing that you need to do is, okay, well, who's going to be staying in my short-term rental business?
Right.
Like, what customer are you going to be serving?
Yeah, which is a lot like saying, what kind of restaurant do you want to be?
Right.
Do you really want to be Chinese? Maybe you want to be Italian, like
Yes,
Wendy, right?
yes.
The Olive Garden thing. And then you have to start thinking, well, okay, I'm Italian, but am I like a high-end Italian place? Is it that kind of experience where people, go on date night? Or is it more like middle of the road, like Olive Garden? Or is it that place in the mall that sells pizza?
Sabero.
Because I would consider that low-end Italian.
Right.
Right? They're selling pizza by the slice in the mall.
I would too.
Right?
It's disgusting.
But you'll notice all three of those places are in different types of real estate.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
So the Olive Garden is an Olive Garden.
Yeah.
The Sabero is renting a space in the mall. And then maybe the high-end place is in a nicer part of town even.
Right, right.
Right? Yeah.
But the whole point is that they've considered their customer first.
Yes.
And they know who they are because they know who they serve.
Yeah. And then they located the restaurant.
And then they located, well, where does my customer, well, number one, where does my customer want to be? Mm-hmm. Where's my customer at? And what type of property does my customer want to be in?
Right. And what quality of things am I putting in there?
Ooh, that's really good too.
Right. So getting that down first, and we always say, start with avatar, start with who you want to serve, start with what restaurant you want to build, right? Because hopefully you want not just one, you want a whole chain of these things. Mm-hmm. And
I know we do.
And that's another mistake that ends up happening with real estate investors, is because they're going for deals and value.
Oh, this is another really good point. Yes, they are. Real estate investors tend to think about what the cash flow that this particular property is going to bring in, right? And tell people what the problem with that is.
Well, I mean, I think you should be considering that.
Well, that's fine and dandy.
It is, but the problem is, a lot of times the deal doesn't always match up with the customer you're trying to serve.
Yes, and that's the point that I was trying to make.
Yeah, and you end up with 10 different properties.
Right. So you can have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house over here, a duplex over here in a totally separate part of town, and
You know, a 4-bedroom over here.
Right.
And then I've got this place in the
this
mountains, this one beach house.
5-bedroom beach house over here,
Right.
and you're serving totally different clients in each one of those spaces.
Yeah, you're right. And it's kind of like, okay, I've got an Italian restaurant, I've got a Chinese
Yes.
restaurant, I've got a Sbarro,
Yes.
and I've got a Taco Bell.
Yes.
Right.
And a Ruth's Chris up in the mountains.
Yeah, maybe a Roost Chris would be like at the high end place,
Right.
right? The nice one in the mountains. Okay, I got you. But the problem with that is, now, because I didn't consider that the short-term rental side of this really is its own separate business, now my marketing's fractured,
Yep.
right? So every guest that comes through the door, well, I'm not really marketing my duplex to somebody that stayed at my mountain house with 5 rooms, because
Right.
that's not what that's a totally different customer.
Right.
Right. So now, if I really want to get into like taking direct bookings and having an email list, and I all of a sudden have this fractured customer base, right? And if I want to reach those different types of people, now I have to, if I had $100 to market with, I got to put 10 on the beach house and 10 on the, instead of spending the whole 100 and saying, hey, here, come stay at any of these places, right?
Yep.
And not to mention, they're geographically separated
Yeah. Right.
a lot of the times, by a lot. Sometimes I got one at the beach and one in the mountains.
Right.
And it's like, cool, and I got one in Charlotte. Right? And
Right.
it's, instead of having 3 in one location that serve the same type of customer, right?
Right. Well, you know, another, dang, I just had it. So I just thought of another problem with that was, even if let's say somebody stayed at your beach house and had a really great experience, for example, they want to come back, but the time that they want to come back, your beach house is rented. Or even worse, what if the bathroom breaks and you only have one bathroom at one of your places, you don't have anywhere to move them to.
Yeah, because your other place, even if you're saying, oh, well, I just do beach houses, well, do they all serve the same type of client?
Yeah.
And if they do, that's awesome, right? Because now I can say, well, you know, that one's not available because the pipes burst,
Right.
but we have this one over here that's just like it.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
It's the same experience. It's
Yep.
going to be the same type of place. It's going to be the same level of service and all those kind of things that you would have gotten over here, or that you previously experienced, even. Like you were talking about the person returning.
Yep.
Right? When they return, they're not really saying,
I want to be here in this place.
in this house,
in
right?
this house.
They're really saying, I enjoyed that
I
experience.
enjoyed that experience. Yep. That's exactly right. And you know, this happened to us not too long ago. We're in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it is hot as Hades here in the summertime. So the air conditioner went out in one of our places, and we serve families with children
And pets.
and this family had like a small baby. I want to say the baby was,
It wasn't
maybe
walking. Like, it was a baby
like,
baby. Yeah.
like 6 months maybe. And you can't keep a 6-month-old baby in a house in the middle of the summer in the South with no air conditioning. I don't know how our ancestors made it through.
Well, they probably got
I
climate.
really
Well,
don't.
people died, especially in the winter. Like, same thing. Like, if the heat goes out in the winter, you're going to freeze to death, right? So you need a place to either correct the problem, by having portable space heaters or something, or
Right,
portable
yeah.
air.
Well, those are the operational things that we've learned.
Right, yeah, but having a place to move them to is also an option,
Yes, it is.
right? And
Yeah.
it better be something that's really similar,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Because that's what they're paying for.
Yep.
So it's hard to take somebody that, is staying at your like Hilton uptown and say, well, your room's not available, but we can move you to the Red Roof.
Right.
Even if it's across the street.
Right.
Because it's just not the same place.
It's not the same experience.
And they're not going to be happy with that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the a couple of things that I thought about, were problems with that perspective. Could you think of anything else?
Yeah, part of it is, here's another big thing that I see. People will get into the short-term rental space that come into it from either the real estate investing world or just that perspective on it. And because they're thinking of it as, okay, my mortgage is this, my insurance is this, right? And then I'm going to make it a short-term rental, so now I've got to pay for utilities and, I got to put some furniture in there, right? But I didn't really think about who my customer was, so I bought furniture on the marketplace, Facebook Marketplace.
Oh God.
Or better, or worse yet,
la.
baby, we really need a new couch, and we could take this old one and put it in a short-term rental, and we'll get ourselves a new couch.
Oh no! Stop talking. You're killing me, Smalls.
Because I don't care who stays there. Really, I'll take anybody.
Oh.
Right? Mm-hmm. And the problem with that then becomes, okay, you've just made that place a commodity, and you're only competing on price. Mm-hmm. You're only competing on price. Yeah. So when things happen like, I don't know, COVID or whatever, you're now competing with people that are lowering their price. So now you're a commodity, and now you're just competing on price.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's huge. Yep. Well, I like the way that we've done it is, the way that we coach a lot of people to do is to think about who you're serving, what customer is going to be there, and then put what they want inside the unit, right?
Right, yeah.
So, for example, if you are serving families with children and pets, what are you going to put inside the unit? You're going to put a pack and play, a stroller.
Yeah, we do the high chair. Yeah.
Dog bowls.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to put those pet covers over the
couch. Right.
And pray that people
And we're going to have
them.
a place that doesn't have carpet.
And we're going to have a place that doesn't have carpet.
Right.
But what was my point?
Well, those people raise their hand and say, I want to stay there.
That's right. That's what I was going to say.
And it's not because, you're $75 and
Right.
that person's $100.
Right.
That's less part of it, right?
Yes. It's not so much how much is it now? Mm-hmm. It's, does that place have everything that I need? Because if I'm a woman and I'm a wife and I've got 2 small children and I am coming to Timbuktu to visit my elderly parents, mm-hmm. and I've got to cart all this crap. I don't know how these little babies come with so much crap.
They do.
But they do,
There's
don't
all sorts
they?
of baby contraptions.
Oh my goodness. And nowadays, the baby contraptions, I mean, our kids are a little bit older. Some of the baby contraptions nowadays are pretty ingenious. And I'm like, man, I wish we had had those things when our kids were little.
Right.
But anyway, I don't want to have to cart that stroller and that pack and play through the airport, mm-hmm. or pack it in the car. Oh, hey, look, this place already has one.
Right.
They've already thought about me and my needs. Mm-hmm. So the customer feels really considered, right? And so now they're thinking, well, I could pay a little bit more for this great space that has everything that I need already.
Right. And those people have obviously thought of me.
Yes.
When they put it together.
Yes, because because we are speaking to that particular customer. And why are we speaking to that particular customer?
Because that's who we picked.
Because that's who we picked, and that's who we know who we are.
Yeah.
And we coach people, know who you are and who you're serving.
And who do you like to serve even?
Yeah.
Right.
And because when, how do you we'll talk about all of that, right?
Yeah, we will.
How to choose that, and I believe that's on another episode here coming up pretty
Yeah,
soon.
but that's a mistake I see.
All the time.
It's a, hey, I didn't consider you.
Yes.
Right? Because
And people can tell.
I don't really care who comes, is what that says.
Yes.
As long
Right.
as they're paying.
Yes.
And that works to a degree until, well, this is why you hear people say things that I think are kind of silly, but they'll say, well, the market's so saturated.
Right.
And the truth is the market is saturated in generic
Yep.
places with marketplace furniture and cell phone pictures and, well, everybody knows to put a Keurig in there now.
Right.
Right? And everything's cookie cutter and kind of looks the same and
Bland, gray, grayish,
yes,
boring.
not designed. It'll, because as a real estate investor, you're kind of looking at it in very, I'm going to put this much money in and then I can get this much rent, and the less I put in, the more my return.
Right.
Right? And that's not really always the case.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? Because if you actually consider who your customer type is, it may cost you more up front, but you'll actually make more in the long run. Because you will consistently attract that customer.
Ooh, that's good. And
that's the key to getting them to come back direct too, by the way. Which is
dang, I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
I was just about to say that.
Which is even more profitable.
Yes.
Right? Because you don't really want to be, you're not building an Airbnb business, right? The whole idea is I'm building well, at least for us, in our avatar, we're building a business that provides temporary housing, short-term rentals for families with children and pets, right? And we want those people to raise their hand and say, I want to stay there. And by the way, I want to stay there again.
Yes.
The next time we come.
Yes.
And by the way, our friends who are just like us, we're going to refer that to them, right? Because we had such a good experience.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. That's what it's all about right there, is building your brand and building that database of customers that you can market back to.
Right. And that's how you start solving problems of, quote, saturation and, quote, well, other things, like, pricing and all these other kind of things that people tend to get tripped up on because, frankly, they came into it as real estate investors.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Or saw it as a real estate investment. Right? Even if you didn't start out as a real estate investor, a lot of times what you learned about this business came from someone who actually had that perspective as well.
I hadn't considered that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I see what you're saying.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of the discussion we were having.
Yeah.
And some of the pitfalls you run, and it comes down to kind of what you said last time. I think on the first podcast you said, or the first, We're Back podcast for Short-Term Rental Authority, you made mention of, the thing that's lacking in the industry isn't, properties or, money. There's money everywhere floating around, believe it or not. What's really lacking is
How to operate.
Yeah, how to operate and how to operate competently.
Yes. Competent operators.
And efficiently.
Yes.
And what are you actually operating?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
what are you actually doing here?
Right. Well, that is the number one mistake that we see people make all the time. Not realizing that the Airbnb that you just opened is a business. It's
In and of itself.
in and of itself, and it's separate from the real estate that you're operating your business in.
Yeah. And here's proof of that, because the hotels figured it out a long time ago. I was watching, it was something on YouTube. I can't remember exactly which video it was, but they were discussing, are the hotels afraid of Airbnb? Like, is Airbnb a threat to the hotels?
Oh, yeah.
And what I learned, that was the subject, but the thing I actually got out of that video is that, for example, IHG, which is International Hotel Group. There's only a certain number of big hotels. Like there's the Marriotts, there's IHG, Hilton, some of them like that. And then they have their sub-brands. Like IHG is your Holiday Inn and like your
so IHG
Travel
is
Inn
Holiday Inn.
and your Days Inn.
Gotcha.
You know, Marriott has, you know, like Courtyard by Marriott. They've got Hilton is Home to Suites. But they've got these sub-brands like under that.
Right.
But they don't own many of them at all.
Like they don't own the real estate?
Correct. They're not in the real estate business.
That blows my mind.
In particular, IHG, and I'd have to go independently verify this, but according to the video I was watching, they sold their last 2 that they actually owned some time ago.
So they don't even own the real estate.
Yes, so when you go to a Holiday Inn, it's not owned by Holiday Inn. It's franchised by Holiday Inn.
That's what it is.
And somebody else bought the real estate.
Right.
And bought, frankly, the business. That's what a franchise
Right,
is.
that's what a
The
franchise
value in Holiday Inn is the systems.
Yeah.
It's the experience. It's
And the name.
It's the name.
Yeah.
The brand.
The brand.
And the marketing. And all of those things.
You get to take advantage of all those
And
things.
they realized that a long time ago.
Yeah.
So Holiday Inn as a brand, or I guess International Hotel Group actually as a brand, because they're the umbrella, isn't in the real estate business.
That's crazy.
Yes. They
don't even own the building?
No, and they don't even, you would think they would even manage them.
But they don't?
They do. They offer it as a service.
Right.
But I think I forget which group it was, but only 2% of them did people even take them up on the offer to manage it. They were simply buying the name, the brand awareness.
Like the computer software
Yeah,
stuff.
like how do you run a hotel?
Like here's
right?
the owner's manual.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what a
Gotcha.
franchise is,
Right.
essentially.
Right.
And all of that stuff, and that's really the value. So when you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to turn this into a Airbnb or a short-term rental or whatever, realize that the value is in the systems and the processes and the operations and the customer experience, and it's based off of reviews, and that's really what's creating the extra value. And the real estate itself is something entirely separate.
Yep. And that was the main point that I personally wanted to convey to people.
Yeah.
In the podcast. Have you got anything else you want to say about that?
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, I'm sure I'll come up with something. I'll be like, man, I should have missed out. But good thing we've got more episodes coming. Because if John thinks of something later, he can write it down and say it on the next one.
That's right. That's right. All you got to do is remember to write it down.
Because
I'm not going to remember.
I will say, Wendy, write this down. Because Wendy's the note taker.
Yes.
Because here's the secret. If I write it down,
you won't be able to read it.
I won't be able to read it later. Even though it's my handwriting.
I can't read your handwriting. And if you can't read your own handwriting,
I know.
that's bad.
I think about 3rd grade, I was like, okay, I can make letters good enough to pass, and I just never practiced after that.
Yeah,
right?
It's really bad. It's really bad. Well, we hope that you found some value in the discussion on the podcast today. If so, be sure to click that like and subscribe button so you get notified of the next podcasts that are coming out, because we have loads more great conversations and great topics coming for you from the Short-Term Rental Authority with John and Wendy Williams, your trusted authority for all things short-term rental related to help make you best rated ever. Until next time.